So for everybody that just joined, welcome everybody. This is the How to Win in the Current Housing Market. It's a lunch and learn, so it'll be a brief session. What we decided to do is normally we get between 10 and 20 people to join the event, and it makes it a little more interactive if you can also actually share something. If you want to, of course, not mentor, if you feel more comfortable doing it during the chat. I also understand that it's working hours, so some of you might either be in the office or be working. So I can understand if you don't want to turn on your camera or share anything live. But for those that are comfortable with that, please feel free to turn it on if you want to ask a question or share something. So my name is Kimo. I am the founder of Expat Housing Network, and I'm half Dutch, half Caribbean. I'm a proud father of a daughter who's 4, but she thinks she's 16, so that's always fun. And I bought my own home about 5 years ago, and it took me a while. Back then, I wasn't in the business, so I didn't actually know anything about buying a home or finding a home. So it took me a while. It was already a competitive market, but it's good for me to have gone through that because I know what it's like to go through that process without kind of like having the proper information. I think that if I would have known then what I know now, things would have looked a little bit different. Today's goal is to add value to you guys. And how do I do that? By sharing information. Some of it you might already know, some of it might be a little bit new to you. By the way, if there's anything that you want to learn more about or want to have a little more information on, please feel free to pop a question in the chat. Don't do it in the Q&A section, do it in the chat because I'll be able to see what is in the chat. So we still get some new joiners, so that's great. For all the new joiners, we've created like a little meeting setup. So if you want to ask a question in real life with using your voice instead of typing, then please feel free to do so. Okay, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the introduction to EHN. I always like to introduce the company because it's not just me. We're going to talk about the Mindstate, getting to know the housing market and the reference as well. Also about 5 tips to succeed in the current market. I believe that greatness is achieved in the agency of others. So if you do decide to move forward and work with us, you'll most likely work with my colleagues, most likely 1 or 2 of them actually, because, well, technically they're doing this now longer than I am doing this and they have more experience. So if you do want support with helping us find you a home then or securing a home, then we'll be here for you. Where can we support you? Throughout the Netherlands. So we are operating in the major cities, so the Amsterdam metropolitan area, Rotterdam, the Hague metropolitan area, Maastricht, Eindhoven, and also Groningen. What else to share about EHN? We're not traditional real estate agents. We don't have a background in real estate. We have a background in liberal arts, psychology, name it. We do have a lot of experience with finding people a home. We initially started off finding homes to rent. And then about 3.5 years ago, we started buying homes for people as well, because that was the request that we got more and more. We don't offer selling services. Why? Because we really want to zoom in and focus on helping people buy a home. If you compare us to an agent who does selling and buying, then currently it's a seller's market, so it's very easy for them to gravitate towards the seller client than towards the buying client because it's easier to sell a property. We also charge a fixed fee, no commission, and we know what it's like to sell into a new country. There's a few things that add value. By working with us, we can actually book in viewings when it's no longer possible, not always, but most of the times. And selling agents take our offers more seriously because we've done due diligence, so they're serious whenever we submit an offer, and we support, of course, with legal documents. We help define the market value, which is very important. We'll talk about it a little bit later. And of course, we'll inform you about rules and regulations, help you not make the mistakes that I made 5 years ago. Okay. If you have any questions, pop me in the chat or turn on your camera and your mic, and please feel free to ask away. I'm going to talk a little bit about the mind state because right now the market is going upwards. It's been doing that for a while now, and I get a lot of questions from people saying like, "Is it a good time to buy?" And I think that for you to kind of like, or for us to decide that, you need to have a little bit of context, right? Because a lot of people feel that there might be buying on the top of the market. Oh, yeah, I can slow down a little bit, Jaya. Please feel free, like if I talk too loud, too soft, if I go too fast, then let me know. So we get a lot of questions of people that ask us, is this the right time to buy? Then I tell them context is very, very important. Why are prices going up? And the first and foremost important thing is that the government, both the Dutch government, but also, of course, the international and the fiscal banks have created a climate that makes it very attractive to buy a home and to own a home. So the Dutch government has created fiscal benefits. One of them is the tax exemption. If you are 34 years or younger, if you buy a property up to 400,000 euros, and if you've not used a tax exemption before, then you are free or exempt from paying transfer tax. Transfer tax is 2% of the purchase price. So that is a lot of money. But what we're seeing is that a lot of people are putting that money back into their offers. So the offers are increasing. Then you have something called interest rebate. So you can deduct the interest that you're paying on your mortgage off your taxable income at the end of the year. So it makes it very interesting for homeowners to actually, well, have a mortgage. Then you have capital gains for people that are buying properties and then selling properties. There are no capital gains. So what that means is that there's no taxes on profits that you make on your property. So we're seeing that money go back into the market again. Also, low interest rates. The interest rates are between 1.5 and 2%. So that means that money is cheap. It's not free. Money is cheap though, because about 6, 7 years ago, it was close to 5%. And before the millennium, it was closer to 10%. So imagine that. Huh? High rents, of course, also. Um, very interesting. Why are high rents a driver for prices going up? Because it's a two-way street, right? So you have a more difficult housing market to buy. That means that a lot of people will be driven towards the rental properties. There's not a lot of rental properties because you have controlled housing, which is not accessible for the majority of the people, and then you have free market. The free market means that a landlord can define if they want to increase the rent and how much they want to increase the rent by. So rental price will go up because there's more people than there's properties there. And the properties that are for sale sometimes are being picked up by private investors who then rent it out. So they're taking away stock from the housing market to put in the rental market. That drives people to consider like, hey, if I'm paying 14, 15, 16, 1700 euros on rent on a monthly basis, that's money down the drain. Why not buy a home? And the last one is lack of supply. But often the real estate agents say that this is the majority of the problem. Let me take a quick sip. It's not. In the 70s, there was a bigger housing shortage than there is now. But prices weren't going up that rapidly. Why? Because it wasn't as attractive to buy a home. So the government didn't have all these fiscal benefits in place. And you could say or argue that when you own a home, you manage it better and so on. But there's a big group of people that are now not able to buy homes because they don't have enough money, or they don't have enough capital, savings, or earn enough money to actually enter the market. So it's very, very important to understand that these reasons that I gave before are more important for the driver behind the housing market than the lack of supply is. Lack of supply, however, is a case, and the Netherlands is very, well, I wouldn't say they're famous for not not making their quota when it comes to building properties, but they are not making their quota on an annual basis almost. So what we see is that all these regulations, policies, just regular situations cause price to go up. And I don't see that change anytime soon. I think especially the next year, maybe 2 years even, we'll see price go up, maybe even with two digits the next year. And then the year after that, maybe we'll get closer to like 6 or 7%, but they will still go up, right? Of course, I am not a forecaster when it comes to like major economic cycles or major economic developments, right? I think it is important to take into account that we're still in this thing called Corona. So how do we actually deal with that in the long run? It's difficult to say, but I know that the price is not going to go up in the short term. And I think that if you buy a property, don't buy a property for 1 or 2 or 3 years because that's more speculation. Buy a property for a little bit longer period of time. And if you move out, maybe rent it out at some point, right? So that's important. Okay, so several tips to succeed. The first one is make sure you do your preparation, right? Make sure you nail your finances, understanding how much you want to spend on a monthly basis, right? Some people use the rent that they have versus the mortgage that they want to spend on, but don't forget, mortgage is consisting of principal, so what you actually build up in equity, and interest. So you have some room to play there. Then you also want to make sure that you talk to a mortgage broker. Why? I always compare banks and a mortgage broker in the following way. A bank is kind of like a old-fashioned retail shop. You go in there and they'll try to sell you the products that they have, but banks don't have that many mortgage products if you go into an individual bank. A mortgage advisor is more kind of like your independent how would you say that, personal shopper or stylist, right? They have a range of products they can choose from. They don't care which one you buy because there's no incentives for them to for like promote a specific package. They just want to make sure you understand what you're buying, you're happy with the product, and it looks good on you. So I would definitely advise to talk to a mortgage broker. They'll be able to share what is it you can borrow, so know that before you start, and also what kind of mortgages suit you best. Um, the last thing that I would say is important is that mortgage advisors, independent mortgage advisors, will be able to tell you if it's likely that you're going to get a mortgage or not. And you can use this a little bit later down the line when you submit that offer. And of course, they'll be able to give you the best rates possible. By the way, if you want us to introduce you to an independent mortgage broker, just let me know. Pop in your, what do I need? I need your email address, I need your name, and you need your phone number. Just pop it in the chat. Feel free to send it to me directly, and we will connect you with one or two mortgage advisors that we have worked with in the past that can do a really great job and help internationals as well. Of course, also know what you have to spend on purchase fees. Take into account that if you are exempt from taxes, and I mean transfer tax, you have to pay around 3% of the purchase price. So that's what you need in savings before you actually start the process. If you do have to pay transfer tax, which means that either you're 35 years or older, or you're buying a property that's worth more than 400,000, or you're buying a property and you've already used exemption before. So please be mindful that if you do have to pay transfer tax, you'll pay about 5% in purchase fees of the purchase price. So please be mindful that you have to save that amount of money, right? And then, of course, make also sure that you have some savings on the side, because right now it's a very competitive market and properties will be bought and sold for over the actual market value. Okay, then fundamentals. I'll share a little bit about Funda because that is the main website for you to kind of like find properties. There's a few things I want to highlight. First, set up a reminder, right? I think most of you have already. You can save your search and then it sends you new properties every time something new pops up on the market. Browse not for relevance, but browse on date because right now the market moves quick. So you want to find out what the newest properties are and not so much what the most relevant properties are. Also, check for availability, of course. That's kind of like a no-brainer. Here you can see the status of the property, and here you see the asking price. But one of the things that we use the most or advise the most is book a viewing ASAP, right? Don't call the agent. Make sure you're in their system. You can, of course, also call the agent, but if you like a property that you see, then book a viewing in if that is a possibility, right? Either way, you'll be in their system, and most often, especially if the property is posted Friday and they don't pick it up until Monday, you want to be in their system because a lot of agents will go over that list first and then they'll accept phone calls and so on. So make sure you do that. Also, when you look for properties, start looking for properties with a budget gap about 15% to 20% below what you can actually spend. So this property here, asking price is 400K. If you're interested in this property, make sure your market or like your mortgage cap is not 420,000 euros, right? Make sure your mortgage cap is anywhere, or at least mortgage cap in combination with savings, is at least for 60, around that, right? Because there will most likely be overbid. We'll talk about that in a few. Um, Also look at the price per square meter if you start comparing properties. A lot of people are looking at the complete prices when they compare properties, but if you want to compare a property in the neighborhood, look at price per square meter. Also, look at, especially if this is an apartment, look at what the owner association, which is the group of owners that has to maintain the building, the public areas, look at what they save on a monthly basis. What we do is we use a calculation of 1 to 1.3 to 1.5 euros per square meter is what you actually have to spend to the service cost of the owner association. So here you see a property that's 50 square meters and they pay 66 euros. That makes sense. Let's say this would have been 110 euros, then that would have been a little bit more than 2 euros per square meter. Then you want to figure out why that is. Or let's say this would be 40 euros, then it would be less than €1 per square meter. You want to figure out why that is. We had a case the other day where the service fees for the VVE or the owner association were too high. And then we figured out what the case was, right? It turned out that the foundation had some issues and they were saving some money for that. If it's very low, then most likely it means that the owners just pay ad hoc. So you want to make sure that you understand why that is. Some other things to look at: energy label, especially if it's a low energy label, see if you can bump it up, because I think a lot of people are currently looking for high energy labels, but an energy label of C or D or even E is not necessarily bad, because there might be ways of improving that, right? Maybe you have to replace the boiler, maybe you have to like do some insulation, but it could be a relatively affordable way to increase the value of your property and to make it, of course, more energy sufficient. Also, double check if it's full ownership. So let me explain that. Property, and especially in the cities and especially in the capitals, a property is either on ground that is owned by the owners of the property, and especially if you have an apartment building, then it's owned by the whole apartment, kind of like the owner association. Sometimes it's owned by the municipality. If it's owned by the municipality, then you pay rent to the municipality. That's called leasehold. If it's freehold, you own it. If it's leasehold, you pay to someone. If it's the municipality, that's great. The majority of the leaseholds are municipality rented. If it's a leasehold that's from a private owner, then most likely you'll have to pay a private owner. And banks don't really like that, because private owners use different rules and regulations. So they might bump up the ground lease at some point to a, well, exorbitant amount. So make sure you understand if you buy a freehold or a leasehold. Then, if it's an owner association, so if you buy an apartment, then have a look at if there's a reserve fund that they have, so that they have savings, and if there's a maintenance plan, so you understand what they'll spend on maintenance in the future. Okay, so we've touched on your finances, we've touched on the fundamentals. Now let's talk about value, value, value. This is very, very, very important. Why is that? Because we get asked often, how much do I have to overbid over a property? And then I say, stop it right there. Because what a lot of people are doing, they're using the asking price as a reference. However, the asking price is the amount that the selling agent puts the property up for. Sorry, they put it up for 400,000 euros here. Let's use this example. So the asking price of this property is 400. I can hear myself a little bit, so take some tea. Oh, that's cold. Sorry. So the asking price is 400,000 euros, but the market value is 430,000 euros. The purchase price, somebody buys it for 460. Then the difference between asking price and purchase price is 60K, 15%. The difference between market value and purchase price is 7.5%. This is, however, very subjective. Let's say we take another agent, uses the same property, but puts it up for 380,000 euros. The market value doesn't change, and somebody buys it for 460. The difference, however, becomes bigger. So instead of 16% over, you pay 21% over. The difference between market value and purchase price is, however, no different. Let's say everybody starts using this reference, then go back to this one. 21% over means that somebody's going to offer 484,000 euros. That is too much, right? That's how we drive prices up. So don't talk about the difference between asking price and purchase price. Talk about the difference between market value and purchase price. So how do you define a market value? You define the market value by looking at similar properties. Similar properties that are sold in the last 6 to 12 months. And when I mean similar, it's a similar neighborhood, similar size, similar setup. And if the quality differs, you might add some corrections there. We can actually help you with that. We do that research. We give you a valuation range, and often we're spot on. And that means that you'll know what you can actually also get from a mortgage, because the bank or the mortgage provider will only give you this amount. They're not going to look at this. They're not going to look at this. They will look at the market value. So make sure you understand that. Okay, number 4, a winning offer. What is a winning offer? A winning offer is a good price. It's not always the highest price. Let me quickly go back to this one. So let's say you're going to offer those 480,000 euros, right? So 480, you're going to offer that, but you only have 30,000 euros in savings, and the market value is 430. Then you technically can only spend 460. If the selling agent finds out that you don't have more money than you, or you don't have enough money, then they're going to not accept your offer. So the highest offer is not always the best offer. An offer, a good offer, means that it's a reasonable offer, of course, that it's competitive, but that you can actually share with the seller that you're going to move forward and buy the property. So what you want to offer the seller is security, that you can actually move forward, that you have enough savings, that you did your research, that you're not going to be surprised by the property. There's 2 clauses that you need to take into account. One is the finance clause. The finance clause means if you don't get your mortgage, you can pull out. That's why I would technically advise you to chat with a mortgage advisor because they'll be able to tell you if you can take out the finance clause or not. If you take it out, your offer is much more secure for the seller. Why? Because if you leave it in, then technically 4 to 6 weeks after you've signed that purchase contract, you can still back out. So that means that the seller has to wait until that time before he finally knows whether you're going to move forward or not. And by the way, the selling agent will also need to wait until that time, and they don't really want to start all over again. So they'll most likely direct the seller towards the offer that doesn't have a finance clause in there. The same thing applies for a technical inspection. So let's say you want to have a technical inspection done, and then after you get the report, it turns out that you're not happy with it, right? And then you pull out. If you wait too long with that technical inspection, then the seller will not be happy. If you do it ASAP, that'd be great. So also figure out what your level of competition is, but make sure you understand how you make your offer attractive. Offer the least amount of hassle. If the seller has a property that needs a little bit of fixing up to do, you can either request that from the seller, but most likely he'll go for an offer, especially if it's a similar offer that doesn't request that. If the seller, let's say, wants to move out the 1st of February because he's bought a new property, but they need to do some renovations, and you ask the seller to move out the 1st of December, that's not going to be nice, right? Because then they need to move out, store their stuff, and they need to move back in again. Unless you can make it so attractive because you add a certain amount of money on top, but make sure you understand why the seller is selling, when he wants to leave, and if there's any other things that he is mindful of. For example, sometimes we have sellers that want to sell some of the furniture, right? And sometimes it means that if you submit an offer, it makes it attractive to add the furniture to the offer. The last one is offer a personal touch. Make sure that you understand if the seller is a party who's lived in the property or not. If he's lived in the property, or she or they, then most likely they'll have an emotional connection with the property, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that they understand that the person that will buy the property also will have an emotional connection, because if they have to choose between an investor and you, they'll most likely go for you. So make sure it's personal, share a little bit more about yourself, a bit more background, and so on, so on. The last point, due diligence, due diligence. So this is a question for you guys. So you have a technical inspector. The technical inspector comes in to inspect the property and figure out if there's any malfunctions, if anything needs to be repaired on a short or long term, and just make sure you understand what the condition of the property is. Then you have the appraiser. He comes in to actually inspect what the value of the property is. They'll go in, take a few photos, but they'll do the majority of the work behind their desk. And then once they've set up the report, they'll send it to an independent institute. They'll check if they played by the rules. If they have, then it's approved and it can go to the bank. My question to you guys is, do you book these guys before your offer is accepted or after your offer is accepted? Maybe pop it in the chat, the answers. That gives me the time to take a quick sip. So do you book the technical inspector and the appraiser in before the offer is accepted or after the offer is accepted? I'm getting a few befores. I'm getting a few afters. There's more befores than after. Okay, I'm going to spill the beans on this one. So, sorry, the offer is accepted first, and then you get these guys in. Why? These guys cost money, first of all. So you'll pay for the appraiser and you'll pay for the technical inspector. You don't want to get them in and then find out that your offer is not accepted. So you get your offer in. When it's accepted, I need to stop drinking that shake. Mm. Once your offer is accepted, then you can actually get them in. Maybe it was a bit of a trick question. Why? Because some of you might think that when your offer is accepted, you're committed. That's not the case. So you're only committed when the cool off period ends. That's why I put like this little timeline here. The cool off period ends about 3 days after you sign the purchase contract. So until then, you can pull out without giving any reason. Please be mindful that you'll incur costs still. So you'll have the technical inspector, the appraiser, and of course the purchase contract needs to be drafted. If it's drafted by a notary, you'll pay them. But you can pull out without any major fines or fees. So what this timeline looks like, you get your offer accepted. Most likely you'll sign the purchase contract a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks after you sign or you get your offer accepted. Then you still have 3 days to pull out. Let's say you wake up sweating in the middle of the night. You're like, oh my God, what did I do? I want to pull out. Then most often you actually just can. So get these guys in as soon as possible, because you also want to know what the condition of the property is, what the value of the property is before you officially sign. So make sure the next day you get your offer accepted, or even the same day, book these guys in for ASAP. It's quite busy at the moment, so make sure that you don't wait too long calling them, or of course have us call them. So get the reports in, preferably before the bridge contract signing, so you understand what the value is and if it needs renovation. If it does need renovation, maybe you can actually negotiate a little bit, right? It's very difficult to actually. Yeah, the cool off period is 3 days. I get a question from Nessie. It's 3 days. So you sign the bridge contract, and then the day after, that's the first day. Day after that's the second day, and the day after that is the third day. It cannot end on a weekend though. So if you sign on Thursday, then you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but it can't end on a Sunday, so it'll end on a Monday. Monday midnight, you'll actually have to. You're committed after that.
Sorry,
Yep.
maybe faster to ask.
Go for it.
So, offer accepted purchase contract signing. You said this is 1 week or a week, 1.5 weeks. So,
Yep.
they accept your offer, and then you get ready. The contract gets signed. Is it signed here? And after
Yeah.
you sign, then there are 3 days to.
Yeah, after you sign. So let's
after-
say, yeah, so it's on the day of signing, then the next day it'll start the cool-off period.
So 3 days, and then here between these 2 dots, you can get out of it without any cost.
Yeah, so you do have to pay a little bit for, you have to pay for the technical inspector, the appraiser, and if you ask the notary to draw up the bridge contract, but there's no fees or fines after that.
Yeah, that's what the fines actually. Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, you're welcome. Okay, so that was it. A brief recap, guys. So before you start, get in the right state of mind. Also nail your finances and use the fundamentals. Make sure you always look at market value and send a smart and considerate offer. Time your due diligence well so you don't end up with a surprise. And of course, good luck. Are there any questions from your end? Please feel free to pop them in the chat or turn on your mic and fire away.
I have a question. So do you think it's a good idea to get inspection or technical assessment if, say, for example, the flat is relatively new?
Yeah, so it depends a little bit. If it's built in the last 10 years, then I don't think you necessarily have to do that. If it's built longer ago, 10, 20 plus years ago, then I would technically do it. Why? Even new builds 10 years ago, they have kind of like things that need to be taken care of, right? And it's very difficult to see because on the exterior and the inside, it might look good, but the technical inspector will be able to assess, hey, there's a little crack here that's vertical, that has an impact on the building, or it's horizontal, it doesn't have any impact on the building. So you want to make sure, and honestly, it's one of the biggest investments that you'll make. So spending $450 on a technical inspection, I know it's money, but I think that you'd sleep better if you know what you're actually buying than whether you are not knowing what you're buying.
So one needs to almost schedule before signing because 3 days is a short time to get it inspected, and then you decide and get out of the contract, right? If you choose that one cannot accept.
Yeah, please understand though that you have to still act in good faith. So if you already have any doubts about the property, you don't necessarily submit the offer. But when you submit the offer, it gets accepted, then make sure you book the technical inspector in as soon as possible. I also got a question from Roy. What are your services versus a mortgage broker? So a mortgage broker focuses really only on getting you the mortgage. What we do is we actually focus on getting you the house. I think our job is a little bit more difficult at the moment than the job of a mortgage broker because they just file the application. What we do is we do several things. It depends. Like we have 2 packages, by the way. We have a package where we join you when you actually have found a property that you like, you want to submit an offer on. And what we do then is we do the research. So we define the market valuation range. So you know what you'll actually get as a mortgage for that property. We actually submit the offer and negotiate. We'll book in third parties like a technical inspector, the appraiser, the notary. We'll also review all the legal documents, and then we'll make sure you understand how you actually sign and what you're signing for and how the transfer goes. We'll also chase the mortgage broker to make sure that everything's in time. That's the first package. That's the smart package. And then we have a complete package where we actually schedule viewings and attend viewings with you. It's also attend all the other meetings, so the technical inspection, the notary meeting. But with the smart package, we don't attend any meetings or do any viewings with you. Any other questions?
Hey, Kimo, I have a question.
Hey, Elena.
If a person, hi everyone. If a person has, let's say, some savings, would you recommend that you don't ask for the full market value to be under a mortgage, but it's a combination of savings plus a mortgage?
Yeah, so what I would first focus on is make sure you actually can secure the property, right? You can then figure out how you want to mortgage it. And honestly, like at the moment, interest rates are so low that I technically would try and mortgage as much as possible. I would use the money that you have maybe in a different way, because the money that you actually save putting it in a mortgage is not as much as when you actually invested in something else. So you can technically use the funds to make your offer attractive, and to also indicate to the seller, I don't need a full mortgage. I only need 80% or 70% or 60%. That is definitely going to make the offer more attractive for the selling agent and the seller, because they'll know that you're going to move forward. If you indicate that, it doesn't mean that you don't have to, or that you can't get a full mortgage out, right? It doesn't restrict you to only getting a 70% or 80% mortgage out, but you can actually play around like that in the offer, that you say, hey, I'm going to submit this offer. I only need 80% mortgage because I have a lot of cash, and that's going to make your offer more attractive.
Okay, thanks, Kimo.
You're welcome. I got a question here from Nessa as well. What are the fees for the full or the other package? So the smart package, we charge 2,500 euros, and for the full package, the complete package, we charge 4,000 euros. It's a fixed fee. We don't believe in percentages, because why would you actually pay more for the property if, why would you pay us more if you're already paying more for the property? Thanks for sharing your details, Lucille. Hi, Amrita.
Hi, I have a question. So, with the market value, how do we assess that? If we hire you, do you assess that for us, or?
Yeah. So what we do is we define the market valuation range. So we say it's minimum worth this, it's maximum worth that, and often it's within that amount. So that's what we can actually help you with. If you want to do it yourself, you can. There's something called a land registry. It's a public domain, but it's a bit of puzzle work, because you have to like request documents separately. But there is a way to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? There's always a bit of a lag between questions asked and me asking any other questions. If there are no further questions, then I'm going to wish you good luck. And I also want to wish you a lovely weekend. We'll hopefully be in touch. Bye-bye.